We have one life.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Here.
Councilmember Beer.
Here.
Councilmember Beckmeyer.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Martin.
Here.
Mayor Vaterlos.
Here. Salute to the flag led by Councilmember Mike O'Neill.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our next and only item is the proposed 2019-20 general fund budget. May we have the staff report?
Thank you, Mayor Vaterlos and council members. Kevin Woodhouse, City Manager. I'm going to kick this off with some introductory comments and then turn it over to Assistant City Manager Hines to go through a lot of the details for the budget. In addition, here tonight we have all of the department directors in case they need to chime in related to specific questions related to their department. What I'll begin with is that this is the budget study session part 2. I believe it was last week we had, maybe the week before, can't remember the date. We had part 1, which really went over and presented 10 different budget strategies with input from the council that helped guide the numbers that you have before you here and the recommendations. This is a study session discussion, so the council is not taking action. In addition, the other part of this study session will present the master fee schedule and recommendations there. That also is a study session tonight. So there are two parts. First, we'll go over the general fund budget recommendations and then segue into the master fee schedule. As I mentioned, the 10 budget strategies that we covered in the first budget study session in the narrative budget really intended to help us in this difficult year balance structurally our budget, ongoing revenues for ongoing expenditures as much as possible, and then there's other project enhancements that relate to the council's goals that were adopted at the last session as well, for which one-time revenues are applied. And as we go through the presentation, we'll be talking about the actions related to those 10 budget strategies and more of the departmental detail in the general fund. So I'll stop there at this point and turn it over to Assistant City Manager Hines.
Mayor Vadalos, members of the Pacifica City Council, my name is Lorenzo Hines, your Assistant City Manager. I am here to present the proposed 2019-2020 General Fund Budget. Hard copies of this presentation have been placed in your positions, so you can follow via monitor or follow via paper. So the budget itself is $35.7 million as proposed for 2019-20. The revenues and expenditures have increased mildly from the levels that they were at during the mid-year, 2018-2019. But at least they've increased. If we go to page 3, and by the way, this is a conversation, so feel free to ask questions as we go along. On page 3, we have a pie chart of the general fund revenues. The general fund revenue relationship between these pie pieces has not changed. We've got property taxes and department program revenues leading the way, followed by other taxes, which includes our franchise taxes, utility user taxes, and various other smaller taxes, and followed by the TOT, which is up this year, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Sales tax is holding firm at right around $2 million. We've got transfers in to support expenditures with Public Works, and we've got a utilization of our fund balance for projects that we'll discuss later as well. And we move to page 4, and this is a summary of our general fund expenses. And as you can see, the scenario hasn't changed here, with public safety leading the way with basically half the budget, the PD at $10.2 million, and fire at $6.6 million, followed by the other departments. And by the way, the general government slice includes city attorney, finance, city manager, city clerk, so all of those are sort of wrapped up into one particular slice.
Someone's at the door. Sorry.
Did I hear a question? Okay.
Lorenzo, can you just explain again what the other taxes are? Because I'm pretty brand new to this, so.
So there are taxes that we break out. We want to see, or at least the council has wanted to see that the TOT, the occupancy tax. They want to see the sales taxes, want to see the property taxes, and these are our major taxes. But we also get taxes from franchise fee like Recology. And we also get utility user taxes, which is another tax on businesses. There's a half-cent public safety sales tax that's there. And so all of those taxes there's smaller increments, and that's why they get lumped in with other taxes. But the biggest part of that number is our franchise tax.
Thank you.
Sure.
Just to clarify, but like the Measure W funds are not included in this chart, correct?
No, the Measure W funds would be included in the budgets that we present for the other funds. You'll see those in
Right.
Fund 9.
The capital improvement budget, et cetera.
streets.
Okay.
Yeah. And what we've started doing last year is showing council what our baseline budget is versus our sort of current budget. And so when you see the departments display, and I'm going to move on to page 5, when you see the departmental displays, you will see a baseline budget, which contains their normal everyday expenditures. And then you will see ads that we've added as part of this year's budget. And so what you see on page 5 is a summary of our baseline ongoing expenses for each department. Sorry. What you see on page 5 is a listing of our general fund ongoing expenses that we see for each department. On the right-hand side, you'll see the ongoing revenues that are necessary to essentially offset those ongoing revenues, or ongoing expenses. We wanted to show you those as in summary. And so as I move to page 6,
What's GG?
general government.
Okay.
Right. As I move to page 6, we're going to start to talk about the proposals for each department. And so we will start on page 6 with general government. General government has a baseline of $4.2 million or $4.173 million. And there are a number of added expenditures that we have added to the budget this year to accomplish council priorities, city priorities, and there are priorities that just, frankly, just needed to get done. And so those are wrapped up in this particular display and the funding levels that you see there. We will come back to you on May 13th and May 28th to talk specifically about each of those line items. But if you have questions, the departments and myself and City Manager Woodhouse would be happy to talk to you about that tonight. But I just wanted to make sure you knew that when we come back on the 13th, we will go over the Parks and Rec budget, we will go over general government budget, we will go over the police budget, we will go over the fires budget in detail. But
This is just the high level.
it's just a high level, but we wanted you to see what this general government budget was made up of, where the baseline was, and all of the other additions that were made. And I'll just briefly go down the list here. We've got IT network improvements. We've got funding for priority-based budgeting. That's the PBB. We've got the document management system, which we're continuing into the budget year. We've got Vision 2025, which is a priority project for City Manager Woodhouse and for the city. We've got policy development and legal expenses that we built in for the Human Resources Department. We've got a placeholder here for the Homeless Task Force. We've got a budget for the Economic Development Committee. We've got additional election costs that we're expecting during the budget year. We've had some additional dollars added in for limited staffing, for sustainability position. We also have a proposal here to convert a half-time position within our finance department to a full-time position in our finance department, and that particular proposal is budget neutral, where we're basically moving dollars around within the budget to fund this position. And so those are the sort of the high-level description of the changes and additions to the general government budget. Yes, sir.
Lorenzo, when previous discussions you've had were, especially regards to vehicle replacement, we were charging each department X amount of dollars to replace vehicles. So basically, we're like a cost center accounting method.
Yes.
Are you doing that with like IT network, document management system? Is there going to be cost center accounting for all those things? And if so, is it going to be ongoing revenue?
In a perfect world, IT would be its own cost center. However, the city has fallen behind as far as our IT infrastructure and sort of the care and upkeep of our IT infrastructure. So it was my hope that we'd get the structure up to speed and get it up to best practices, and then we'd look at some sort of funding mechanism to maintain the system once we got it up to speed. Right now, we're still getting everything up to speed.
So right now, we're funding IT expenditures out of one-time revenues?
We're funding IT expenditures out of ongoing revenues. And the $100,000 that you see here is just an addition to IT's budget to help with network improvements and various other things. But the IT budget is roughly about $750,000 baseline. And actually, it's, yeah, $750,000 baseline. And so this extra $100,000 helps us to move forward with those things that we need to do to get our IT infrastructure to the point where it is close to the best practices of the other cities.
Actually, you answered a question I didn't ask.
Because I'm clairvoyant, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I asked it, you just didn't answer the one I asked. Now I'm going to clarify.
Okay, so what did you ask that I didn't answer?
I don't know what the question was you answered.
You asked about the cost center, whether or not IT
Right,
would be a cost center.
But are you, like with vehicles, you take X amount of dollars from Department of Wastewater?
Right.
And then you put it in an account for
Right.
them to use to replace their vehicles, okay? Are you charging IT and maybe document management and human resources some money to the different departments for cost center?
Not specifically, no, not at this
Okay.
time.
Okay, I was just curious if you were doing that, that's all.
And so the city manager's office and general government pays for the information technology. And in the sense, if IT's costs are borne by the general fund. IT's costs, as well as general administrative costs, there is a contribution coming in from the wastewater fund. Wastewater has an admin charge, and that charge is wastewater's contribution to payroll, IT. And so IT is being supported citywide. It's just not in that more simplistic direct method that you discussed. But that's something that we should definitely, we'll look to move to. Right now, I am, to use an analogy, I'm trying to get the car off blocks and get it running. And once I get it running and running smoothly, then we'll look at ways to maintain it. In any event, the funding now is from the general fund and indirectly from wastewater.
Okay, and wastewater can do it because it's an enterprise fund?
Yes,
Okay,
yes. But those funding mechanisms, they come in it's a different way right now versus a more direct contribution that you see with the vehicle contributions.
okay, no, I'm fine with that. I just was curious if we were doing that or moving towards it. Or,
We'll look to do that in the future, though.
yeah,
That's where we're headed. Any other questions with general government for now? Okay. So the next slide, page 7, shows our police department and fire department. As you can see, the police department, there are no additions. The only changes that were made to the PD as far as their budget is concerned were changes related to increased salaries and benefits related to the increase or related to the labor agreements that we reached last year. And so that's why you saw that sort of 9.9 figure move to 10,203. With the fire department, baseline is $6.328 million. Fire has asked for us to add $25,000 for temporary salaries. This allows them to pay the candidates that are in the academy, and also allows them to take care of any overhires that need to be addressed for folks who are retiring. Fire has also requested that a small equipment reserve be established, and they would like a $75,000 annual contribution for their small equipment reserve, and this goes to pay for new bottles and other sort of paraphernalia, turnouts, things that they need. And then the last line there, fire has requested $208,000 in additional overtime authority to address the fact that they've got a lot of folks working a lot of overtime in order to cover for folks who are out on workers' comp. And so those shifts need to be covered, whether somebody's there or not, and so the folks who are there are working really hard, and so that's why you see that overtime bump. And so the total budget request is $6.636 million. We move to page 8, if there are no questions on that page. And on page 8 is the planning department's budget. And planning's baseline is $2.568 million. This budget contains an additional amount of one-time amount for consultant assistance with the priority development areas and that application. There is a $660,000 general fund cash balance utilization for the update for the general plan and the local coastal plan and the specific plan. There's $160,000 for the SB2 program, and the department is expecting to get grant funding for that. And then there's the affordable housing impact study, which we will also be funding with on a one-time basis.
What is the SB2 program?
Yeah.
Director Wermeister will be happy to come up and explain that.
And is the affordable housing impact fee study, is that the 21 elements that we're part of?
21, my name is Tina Wermeister, Planning Director. Excuse me, the impact fee study, the 21 elements group did do model studies for each city, and so now is our opportunity to take that work and have some savings of just updating it and bringing it back to council for consideration. And SB2 was the bill a couple years ago that was passed that charged an additional fee on recorded documents and for affordable housing. And so the first phase of the rollout includes funding to local agencies to produce or to create programs to fast-track housing, essentially. And so we're still working on what the program we will propose to council, but that's what that funding is. Based on our population, we should get that amount.
SB is Senate bill, okay.
Yes.
I thought it was some other acronym, okay. Thank you.
Hey, Tina, would we have access to the 21 elements study?
So there's a model study that's online, and it is on their website. I can share that with the city manager. And they have not put each individual city's a study online because it needs to be, I think, customized and have some input from staff prior to that. But there is a model ordinance, and there's a list of jurisdictions that have already adopted them, and so you could probably find those somewhere as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. So are there any more questions on the planning budget for now? And so as we move to page 9, we have an overview of the Public Works budget. And so the Public Works baseline budget is $3.665584. There are some ads for the Flood and Sea Level Rise Resiliency Agency. This is the local governmental agency that is being established, and this is the city's contribution to that agency. Public Works has also requested 2 part-time employees. I believe these are half-time employees to help with overtime and various low-level and labor-oriented tasks. Public Works is also requesting $5,000 for dust control at the dog park. Public Works is also requesting an increase in overtime, just about $10,200, $50,000 for tree maintenance cost, an additional tree maintenance cost, and an increase of $20,000 for contractual services to address just services that they may need to address issues that come up within the city.
So it's quite a bit less than last year.
Right.
Why is that?
So what we've done is we've taken all of the sort of capital projects out of Public Works, and we've shifted those to Fund 22, and you'll see that in another slide. And so it's cleaner to just show Public Works on a level that's very similar to the rest of the departments, where it's just sort of the baseline staff and services. Having very large capital projects in the budget just sort of skewed it a little bit. On page 10, we have the Parks, Beaches, and Recreation budget, and again, their baseline budget has not grown materially from last year's mid-year budget. Again, their increases are mostly related to expenditures related to labor agreements being settled. The non-departmental budget is next, and non-departmental is the budget category, as I like to call it, where all the cats and dogs that don't have homes, they go in the non-departmental budget. So our insurance premiums are paid out of the non-departmental budget. The costs for animal control, animal shelters, the city's share of those costs come out of this particular budget. And so the non-governmental organizations, the $88,000, we decided to build it into the non-departmental budget because it actually fits better there. And so these are the dollars going to the Resource Center, the Beach Coalition, and so we wanted to make sure that you saw that those dollars were scheduled and that they're in non-departmental. And in addition, we have a number of transfers out, and these transfers relate to debt service mostly and insurance. And so as we move to slide 11, you can see that we are funding $33.8 million of this budget with ongoing revenue. We're funding $717,000 with one-time activities, or funding $1,717,000 of one-time activities with ongoing revenue. We've got $296,000 being funded with supplemental ERAF that we expect in August, and we've got grant funding of $160,000, and we're utilizing the general fund cash balance of $660,000. And so all that adds up to our budget of $35.7 million.
I have a question.
Yes.
When I'm looking at page 4, on the expenditures for general government, $4,739,000.
Yes.
And then when I look at page 6, and you have a breakdown, it's a different total. Not by a lot, but a little bit different, and I'm wondering if there was an adjustment, maybe because of what we talked about last meeting in budget study session 1?
No, I don't think there was an adjustment made. That's just Lorenzo's spreadsheets not being in sync.
Oh, okay.
So the 4745 is the number.
4745, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
And if that number changes, we'll definitely let you know when general government comes back to see you on the 13th.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions on the department's high-level budgets? All right. So we move to page 12. And page 12 shows you essentially where all of those public works projects went. And so we looked at those expenditures and decided that those expenditures would probably be better funded out of our capital projects fund as opposed to an operating fund. And this also allows us to track these particular projects expenditure-wise. And so the things that we have scheduled, at least proposed for this budget, is a work order system that will allow public works overall, and that includes wastewater and engineering and field services, to actually have a work order system where they can track the many things that they do, where they can track their assets, or they can track repairs to streets and various other things that they have to keep an eye on. The second item is a fuel management system. The city recently completed or recently asked our auditors to do a review of our fuel management system, and now that we know where the internal control weaknesses are, we can fix those weaknesses and put this new system in place. And so that's the fuel management system. There are projects related to Beach Boulevard that are ongoing. There's also ongoing maintenance that Public Works is embarking on. We've got projects at Fairmont West. We've got the facility itself, we have a roof, and then we have the recreation roof. And because it is the child care center that's primarily the recipient of these repairs, we are utilizing the dollars from the child care reserve to pay for these repairs. Child care reserve at the end of last fiscal year had a balance of $1.151 million. And so there's adequate funding there. And these repairs are one-time in nature. The next line item is Station 72, and basically repairing the deck in Station 72. This particular project will be funded out of Fire's budget. They have a building maintenance line, and we'll be funding that. But the repair itself will run through Fund 22, but it'll be funded out of the fire budget in the general fund. And so for these projects totaling $693,000, we're using the child care reserve for $260,000. We're using other funds, and I forgot to mention the fuel management system will be funded out of Fund 71, which is our vehicle maintenance fund. It's also the fund that we show the expenditures for all of the city's fuel usage as well. So it made logical sense that the fuel management system would be funded out of that particular fund. And then we've got another $368,000 being funded with supplemental ERAF, and that's what we're using for the work order system, the Beach Boulevard project, and ongoing maintenance.
Lorenzo, the work order system, is that, I know we had talked about last year's budget about getting like a CRM system. I know Kevin said he was working on that customer relation or, contact management system. Is this going to be able to integrate so that if someone puts in a complaint, they can see the status, a member of the public, and they can see the status of their complaint?
Right. This isn't that particular system, but that's one of those, that's a system that we're talking about internally, and it may be something that we develop internally that will interface with the city's website. But we're still talking about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were talking about last year too.
I understand.
I just wanted to talk about it some more,
I understand. So, And the other thing I wanted to mention is that when we bring the Public Works budget back to you, it may morph a little bit because there are some projects that we need to address within the city. We've got some facilities rehab issues in our planning department and in our parks department that need to be addressed. And so we may alter this capital projects plan just a little bit to integrate those projects as well.
And I'll add that when we do bring the capital program back as part of the budget presentation in the future in more depth, there's also some other projects, for example, parks and recreation projects that are intended to be funded out of the Roya Davies Fund that will appear as well. So this is kind of a general overview, and there'll be more detail in the future.
So you're saying those will be funded out of the other funds, but they'll be shown on the capital projects budget?
So the way we would normally show the capital projects coming out of Fund 22. And so what I tried to do tonight is show you all of the projects that are sort of the priorities for Public Works and have somewhat of a relationship with the general fund. But there are other projects that you'll see in the CIP that will also be funded. And because of the sensitivity around Roy Davies funding, we typically include that with this particular presentation, but we wanted to just mention tonight that there are other projects that will be funded out of Roy Davies. The utilization of those funds is pretty specific, and so we'll come back to you and tell you specifically what those projects are.
Okay, thank you.
And so as we move to page 13, we step away from the numbers and talk a little bit about the strategies that are used in the development of the 2019-20 budget. So our reserves policies, we will continue to fund the city's reserves. We're continuing to pre-allocate excess ERAF and utilize ERAF. We're continuing to augment the streets program with additional one-time dollars. The ongoing portion of our cannabis revenues are included in this budget on the revenue side. We're also including revenues from the short-term rental program for 2019 and 20. And the general fund revenues will be used to fund the development of the general plan update. That actually should be just general fund balance will be used to fund the development of the general plan update. Page 14, the information technology. So the one-time funding of $100,000 will be used to complete our priority IT improvements. Child Care Reserve will be used to fund appropriate projects. Dollars are being utilized for limited-term staffing for the council's priority goals and projects. Funding for other council priority major projects are built into this budget. We also have a proposal to begin funding our Section 115 trust and increase the repayment period for the wastewater pension obligation loan. We're also using, we have dollars set aside for limited term staffing for the sustainability position that we spoke with you about in the first budget study session. And so as we move to slide 15, we basically are presenting the strategies in a numerical sense. And our current, so we'll start with the current general fund, undesignated fund balance. And after all of the sort of adjustments have been made, we currently have about $2.5 million in undesignated cash in our general fund balance. We would like to increase the general fund reserve by $1 million of that and that would take the general undesignated cash balance down to $1.5 million. With our ERAF dollars, we were expecting ERAF to arrive in August 2019 to total $1.131 million. With those dollars, we propose to expend $350,000 on streets, $208,000 for fires overtime, $368,000 for capital projects that you saw on a previous slide. We would like to add $55,000 from ERAF to the facilities maintenance and replacement reserve. We would also like to contribute $150,000 of the ERAF to the compensated absences reserve to replenish that reserve. As you recall, last year we liquidated that reserve to pay for significant retirements that occurred earlier this year. We are also expecting an ERAF payment to come in January 2020, and within that payment, even though we expect it to be lower, we expect to pay the non-governmental organizations out of those dollars. There may be, we will look at funding additional streets, providing funding for streets, and of course the remainder per our pre-allocation policy will go to the disaster accounting fund.
I have a question about that streets piece that you just mentioned that's listed as TBD.
Yes.
Is that because we're waiting to get a sense of our revenues from W and other sources?
That's there because we don't know what the ERAF payment is going to be in January.
Oh, okay.
And I'll add to that. On the next slide, you'll see the Measure W revenues in SB1 and the $350,000 out of this summer's supplemental ERAF payment designated for streets to bring an investment of approximately $1.3 million to streets for this fiscal year. This line item related to the January ERAF is that at that point in time, it could be a policy decision by the council to additionally supplement even more funding for streets programs. And there may be, between now and then, with various other sources of one-time revenues, there may be some other revenue sources that we want to do that with. So I just stuck it in here as a placeholder for that potential future policy decision.
Go back to the page.
If you go back to the previous page, the ERAF funds are spent for all items, street improvements, fire, capital. Those are all recurring items. And didn't we decide a couple years ago, probably when I wasn't even on council, that ERAF funds should be used for their one-time monies, one-time items, not continuing items?
Right. So and that's, these ERAF funds are one-time funds.
Right.
And that's where they're being applied for here. So with the amount of capital projects that we can fund each year, the additional money to street improvement and the others are all based on how much one-time funding we might have to be able to spread amongst those. You see that the addition to facilities maintenance and replacement reserve, the policy level reserve for that is to try to fund $100,000 a year into that. But here we're suggesting, well, this year, because of all of our needs, we can only afford 55 into that reserve and are required.
But street improvements and fire overtime are continuing items.
Yes, they absolutely are. And in Pacifica's history and with our funding challenges, we do have ongoing revenue that funds fire overtime at, I believe, a $400,000 level. But that doesn't meet the historic need that we're seeing for fire. So if we had the ongoing revenues to really cover those, in an ideal world, we would be funding, but portions of those we've had to bridge fund with one time.
So we're just not following through on what we designated for ERAF funds?
So Mayor, may I?
Yes.
May I? So with each of these line items, these are all discretionary. There is no requirement that we meet all of these, that we provide all of these things. So the streets improvements are discretionary. The fire overtime, it is one time because we expect it to go down next year. I've got 2 new people in HR, and we are driving those workers' comp claims as low and as aggressively as we can to get folks back into the fire station and to drive this overtime down. We have sent that signal to the chief. The 2 folks in HR know that the workers' comp cases are our priority, so they're not only pushing the individuals, but they're also pushing our third-party provider and working with fire to make sure that those folks get back to the station or make another decision with their feet. And so, because this overtime it's excessive. And so their baseline overtime number is $312,000. It now goes up to $520. And so, and you know, in our discussions with North County Fire, we know that that's driven by the workers' comp. And so the folks in HR know that that's job one. We got to deal with that. So that's why we believe that that's one time in nature. So we expect that number to go down next year. The capital projects, all of those projects are discretionary. The addition to the facilities maintenance and the compensated absences reserves, those policies call for voluntary contributions. We'd like to see an additional contribution of X amount, but there's enough flexibility there that if we can't make it, then it's okay. And so we saw that the ERAF was here. We saw that there's some discretionary things that we could get done, and also get fire through this particular overtime situation, and that's why we consider it one time.
Okay.
If I could add to that, one way to maybe think of it is, Assistant City Manager Hines used the word discretionary. On ongoing funding, the non-discretionary stuff could be viewed as our salary and benefit obligations and other things that we know are only going to go up from year to year. They're not going to fluctuate much. And then there's sort of this bucket of discretionary projects that are year by year, and they fluctuate in their amount. So some of these funding items fall into that year by year discretionary, but they're not the non-discretionary expenses that we know are going up and that we need to structurally cover, if that helps.
In regards to the fire overtime, so you're saying virtually 100% of the 208,000 is due to workers' comp claims? Or is it due to open positions or staffing levels?
No, it's all due to the fact that we've got firefighters down, and the other firefighters in the house have to cover those shifts.
So it's not an issue of recruitment or whatever, and overtime?
Not that I'm aware of. I think we just got a person through the academy, I think within the last 3 weeks.
Okay.
So, no, the impression that fire has given us is that it's very much related to the workers' comp issues that they're going through right now. And the chief will be here on the 13th, or a representative from fire will be here on the 13th to talk about that particular increase.
Now, and the compensated absences reserve replenishment, that is more of an ongoing budget line item, correct, than an ERAF appropriate? I see why you're doing it for ERAF. It's because of funding. And I agree with the concept that we decided to do this last year. But that is more, that is really an ongoing expense, right? Would be considered under someone with a normal budget?
If we were in a normal budget situation and we had revenues severely exceeding our expenses, yeah, one would expect that contribution to be made on an annual basis. However, when we're in a situation where our revenues and our expenses are pretty tight, and we're still trying to find ways to increase those reserves, we find that the best candidate to do that is with the ERAF, because there's no general fund to do this.
So, I mean, really, by doing the compensated absence reserve replenishment is pretty much the same we do with putting it into the disaster fund. I forget which fund number that is.
Disaster Accounting Fund. yes.
Right, because they're both for one-time expenses at some point.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's basically the same concept, and we use ERAF funds to fund the disaster replacement, the disaster name you just called it.
Right.
Recovery.
No, you're right, because, and let's remember, the purpose of that compensated absence reserve is to address the expenses related to retirement.
Right.
And
it's-
folks are going to only, like you said, they're only going to retire and leave the city once,
Yeah.
as far as I know.
Yeah.
Unless we have a return policy that I'm not aware of. But yeah, so in a sense, it will be one time.
So it is basically just like a 115 trust, is to smooth out the budgetary process.
It's to smooth out those expenditures.
Yeah.
Last year, we had, some significant retirements, and it cost us the whole reserve, $200,000. Just, otherwise, if we didn't have that reserve, that would have come out of the department's budget. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, I'm sorry, any more questions on that? Okay. So we have ERAF both in August and ERAF coming in January. Page 16 lays out the funding for our streets program. And so we're expecting $400,000 for Measure W, and we're expecting $600,000 for SB1 revenues. We're going to augment those figures with another 350, as you saw on the prior page, in ERAF, and that gets us 1.350 million in streets funding for this particular year. And there may be a decision point in mid-year that will allow council to provide even more funding for streets. But again, that's to be determined.
Lorenzo, could that also be considered for the non-governmental organizations?
It is council's prerogative.
So we could possibly talk about more money for the resource center at some point?
Yes. The other reserves or the other components of our strategies here is the utilization of our cannabis business program revenues. As we noted in the very first budget session that I believe it was a third of anticipated cannabis revenues would be considered ongoing. And so we are projecting that one-third this year will equal 125,000. We've got, from what I understand, we've got, we have 6 businesses approved. We have 4 that have gone through the process and we're waiting for them to start opening, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're basically waiting for them to start open their storefronts and start their business. We also have increased occupancy tax due to the short-term rental program. We got our first return from our friends at Airbnb, and it was a 6-figure return. So we were very pleased to see a 6-figure return in the 3 slowest months of the year. And so we're keeping our fingers crossed and fairly confident that we will definitely beat this 350 that's there. But from a conservative point of view, we felt it comfortable that we just left it at 350. And if more comes in, great.
Now, okay, we got the 350 from there, or the 6-figure income. Was there a corresponding decline in the transit occupancy tax from the traditional hotels?
I have not noticed, but I will be keeping an eye on that, and I'll report back to you on that.
Because I'd be curious to see what the net
Right,
gain would be, or loss, whichever it is.
right.
Except that there's no change in the people staying in Airbnbs. It's just the income we're receiving. People have been staying in them. We
Right,
just weren't
but this
collecting the
budget
tax.
item is increased taught due to short-term rental revenue programs. It does not say taught, it doesn't say if what a separate line item of the revenue from traditional hotels. So if you got 100,000 less from your traditional hotels, then the net gain would be
Yeah.
250.
But I see what the mayor is, where the mayor's coming from is that,
See where she's coming from, I'm
Yeah.
just explaining my reasoning.
understood.
Okay.
Well, and at some point, it would be good to know how many units are being out there for Airbnb and other sources, because we don't really know that right now.
Right,
Okay.
right. We're still working with Airbnb on that. The next budget strategy is utilization of general fund balance dollars for the general plan update. And then the next category is information technology improvements. And again, these are improvements to our network. And the use of limited term staffing for council's major goals. And this is related to the sustainability coordinator of $125,000. As we move to page 17, we wanted to indicate that we'll be utilizing the child care reserve for capital projects. And in a sense, the Roy Davies money could have been included on this particular slide because we'll be using those dollars for capital projects as well. We also wanted to make sure you all saw that there are $382,000 in council priority projects built in to this budget. We would also like to begin contributing to Section 115 trust, and so this $200,000 will come directly out of the general fund balance. And we want to increase the payment for the wastewater loan, the POB loan, and if we stretch that from 2 to 5 years, it saves the general fund a little over $500,000 in each of the next 2 years. And so that allows us to take those savings and schedule them for other projects that the general fund has to support. And so if there are no questions, as we move to slide 18, it lays out our timeline and where we are tonight. As I mentioned, we'll be back on the 13th to do the departmental presentations. Again, public safety, parks, and general government on the 13th. And then on the 28th, we have public works, both sides, along with planning and the capital improvement program. June 10th, we have public hearings for budget, CIP, and the capital budget, as well as the fee schedule. Also on June 10th, we'll do our final presentation of the budget, and also an appropriations limit item as well. And on June 24th, we hopefully have the adoption of the 1920 budget, and then Lorenzo can go celebrate after that's all said and done. So are there any questions on the budget part of this presentation?
We're going to go into more detail in the section one, in the 115 trust. You said
Yeah.
when we talk about the funds, right?
Yeah, we've got a presentation that we'll be bringing before you that allows you to see all of the different options that are out there for our dealing with the pension cost, and how we basically went through the analysis process, and we thought the 115 trust was the best fit for us. And so we'll take you through that particular process. And by the way, that presentation also allows us to stay aligned with the requirements of the grand jury report as well. So if there are no questions on budget, I'd like to move to the master fee schedule. And so the fee schedule, we have basically, fees that are flat dollar fees, and we have fees that are based on the time spent. For those fees that are based on the time spent, we use an hourly rate, and And so that rate is increased by the CPI as well as other rates. I'm going to jump back up to bullet number 3. All of the current fees that you see were put in place with a allocation plan and fee study that was performed back in 2013. At some point in the next couple of years, we're probably going to have to refresh that study, and while that's not in this year's budget, it may be in next year's budget. So for 2019-20, I'm on the 4th bullet now. For 2019-20, we're proposing to increase the hourly rates and fees by the CPI of 3.5%, and this was the CPI in February of 2019. Some of the public works fees are increased by the construction cost index. We haven't gotten those figures in, but if there's any changes, we will definitely make sure you're aware of it. There are some departments and some fees that the departments would prefer to remain at a certain level because of market share, because of elasticity of their customers, and so not all of the fees will have gone up. There are some fees that have just stayed the same.
Lorenzo?
Yes.
So I remember reading something in the Chronicle about the rise in construction costs, and I don't think they called it the construction cost index. But if one is higher than the other, are we going to choose the higher of the two, or just leave it to the discretion of what's appropriate to the?
I believe our code actually sets forth which fees are measured by the construction cost index. And so,
Municipal code? Okay.
and so at some point between now and June, myself and the Public Works team will be going through and making sure that these fees are aligned with the CCI.
I think, if I remember correctly, it was up somewhere like 10-15%. If I remember, because of the cost of construction rising.
Yeah, we will definitely look into that.
Thanks.
And so as I move to page 21, there was some discussion about the non-resident swim fees at I believe the last meeting. And these are fees that are charged to non-residents of Pacifica for the use of the city's aquatics programs. That's all I can add. Maybe if council, City Manager Woodhouse.
Yeah, concerning swim fees, Councilmember Martin mentioned it at the last study session, and Director Perez from Parks, Beaches, and Recreation has some preliminary information if the council wants to discuss that further. And then depending on the council's discussion or direction, there would be additional research we would need to do in regards to those fees, and then bring that back in the future. But it's the council's discretion as to whether to discuss that at this point.
Is it at our discretion right now? Or is that like when we're going over in detail the PB&R budget?
You can do it either way. We can talk about it now. Again, PB&R will be right back before you on the 13th. It's up to you.
Yeah, I would say if you can do it now, or you can do it later tonight during discussion, but we would want to get some direction from the council if we're going to need to look at those fees more, because there's more research that PB&R will need to do in order to bring that back to the council in the future.
That line item doesn't say anything. It says fees, it's just looking at fees, but not whether there'll be more, whether they're less, whether, how it relates.
I can expand on that. So my recommendation was, and this has been over the course of a couple years, so I figured while we were talking about it this year, might as well make the suggestion that a couple of folks have come to me, one in particular, repeatedly, but not just that. I was on the PB&R Commission, and I used the pool a lot and in the mornings, and when they shut down for, had to share with Terra Nova the other year, my recommendation is that we increase the non-resident fee a little bit higher. Surrounding cities charge a higher non-resident fee, and I know I'm simplifying this, my recommendation would be, that you would just check an ID. And those, I really don't think it would deter anyone from coming here, because I still think our rates are very low compared to surrounding areas. I understand there has to be research done, but I also wouldn't recommend that we spend too much time on it. I do think that this is simple, and I don't think that a response like, well, it's always been this way is justifiable to keep it because it's always been that way. There's a lot of things that we could address that I could be bringing up. The parking, pay for parking at the beaches is also a pain point of mine, but hey, I'm up here and I'm making the suggestion, so a couple bucks, I don't think, it's not gonna break anyone's bank, it's not gonna increase our revenues, I get that too. But I do think that we should have a priority for residents here.
What is the difference in the fees? What do residents pay? What do
No,
non-residents?
Again, Director Perez is prepared to answer some of the basic data.
Okay.
And we'll go from there. I know one of the points that he'll provide is that the checking, for the drop-in, where this is the topic, we don't check IDs, and checking IDs has an operational impact, and kids often show up and they don't have IDs. But let me turn it over to Director Perez to talk about some of the data.
Good evening, Council. Mike Perez, Director of Parks, Beach, and Recreation. So I would ask specifically what fees, if you're talking about a drop-in rate, if you're talking about our All Access membership, swim team, we have a lot of fees. We do charge non-resident fees for all our swim classes. There's non-resident fee in there. And in terms of just the rec swim, of the 9 closest cities to us, only 3 of them charge a non-resident rate. So if we were to charge a non-resident rate for our drop-in swim program, we wouldn't even be in the majority of cities that do in the surrounding area. And if you take all the cities, the 9 cities that do, if you took them, even though there's some at 0, the difference is less than $1. And the difference between the 3 is about $2.66. So we don't like to deal with cents at the pool, so we would do $1, so that percentage would be high. Right now, it's $5 and $6, and if you buy a pass, you get a free swim out of the amount. So in terms of the drop-in fee, we're not really far off at all.
Yeah, I sent my recommendation, and that was for the drop-in fee, and it was for the people who, and it wouldn't be for children, it would be for adults. I understand the kids come in all the time, they don't have their IDs. It's a suggestion, take it or leave it, and I'll be upset if you guys leave it, because I think it's an easy win. I appreciate the preliminary research, but this is the only discussion that you and I, other than an email exchange, have had about it, so.
Mike?
Yeah, so are there other fees again?
No, I've taken all the classes, I've done it all, I understand all the fees, I read the playbook, I was on PBNR, I understand it all. My recommendation is just that for those people who are dropping in during the day, that they should either show an ID and say, hey, I get the discounted rate, cool. You feel like you're a resident and you're getting a discounted rate. People do come here because we have because we don't have a non-resident fee. The cities that do charge are very close to us.
Excuse me?
The cities that do charge a non-resident fee are very close to us. So it's not like it's down in Belmont or.
No, I understand, but out of the 9 closest cities, only 3 charge a non-resident fee. That's just, we don't have a lot to go by, and we can go way outside of our area and figure that out. But we also do have All Access membership program that about 18% are non-residents, and there's not a non-resident price for that. That's a monthly fee. And we have an unidentified group there too as well, so we don't know how much that would be if we were to charge, but we get a monthly. I think a lot of the cities that don't do it, some cities, if you look just in general with their fees, they don't charge non-resident fees at all because they see it as a deterrent to getting business for their programs. So if you ask some of them and some of my peers, and that goes not just for swim programs, but just for programs in general. So they have sort of that they've found that it's been a deterrent to getting people into their programs. So, but there's also, our swim team doesn't charge a non-resident fee either, but the rest of the fees at the pool do. So, and I would agree with the city manager in terms of the fees, the ID thing could be logistically a hassle depending on who's on deck and how many staff we have and that kind of thing.
Well, I would love to see it as a way to get additional revenue to clean the place. Maybe an on-staff person to clean the place. We need it. That's all I have to say.
Mike?
I think we'd also, in fairness, have to look to see as to definition of resident, because I don't exactly know whether it's a JPA operating agreement or whatever we have with the Jefferson High School District, but it was their bond money that built it. So residents of Daly City, Brisbane, and Colma, and Pacifica are all paying for the pool already. So I don't know the arrangement we have with Jefferson in terms of management of the pool or something like that. But if they're already part of the Jefferson High School District, they are a resident of using that pool. I'm just throwing that out for
That's a good
discussion.
point. Mike, you may know.
Unaware of any restriction. You're talking about the bond measure that just passed, right? Not the bond measure.
No, that was
built-
for housing, but there was one they passed several years ago that they remodeled
Right.
the Terra Nova.
Yes.
And just was
Right,
a
but the pool was
housing
built
bond.
with money from the city as well.
Oh, the city contributed money
Yeah, a
also?
long time ago, yeah, when it was
Okay.
built, not when it was remodeled.
Not when it
So,
was
right,
remodeled,
right.
but just,
Yeah. There's nothing to my knowledge that would stop us, that Jefferson Union requires for us to, in terms of fees.
okay. I just wasn't sure,
Yeah,
that's all.
But I was wondering the same thing, like if there's people who are part of the district and are from Daly City, then that would make them also residents, or I guess there's a little gray area there. And I also appreciate the information because I received the same emails and I wasn't sure how to respond to this community member. So any other kind of information that you can send my way so I can respond would be very helpful.
I didn't receive that. I don't know if that has anything to do with motivated towards space and the feeling that they want more space for residents or something. I don't know. If that's the case, we do have flexible pool hours that during the summer and when the school takes over, there's a lot more time for the kids, and some of the adults may feel pushed out a little bit. But that's a schedule that's been going on for many, many years. So I wasn't sure exactly what the reasoning was.
So I want to, on this topic, I want to make sure, to get clear council direction as to whether we're going to put more time into researching this and doing revenue estimates and whatever is necessary to bring more information back to the council to make a decision about it. Councilmember Martin brought it up, and Director Perez has some preliminary information provided, and I guess from not a vote, but just sort of a head nod from the council or not to know whether we're going to pursue this any further.
Mike, do you have any idea of the cities that charge non-residents? What was the amount of the additional revenue they got from non-residents?
I do
you have any
not know that. I
idea?
just know the amount that they were charging the average, or the amount that they would, we have the fees that they charge for, whatever it is.
$1 or
It's not-
$2
yeah,
more,
the amount.
whatever it
I don't
is.
know the total.
Gross.
What they get from that, and I think it would obviously depend on how many non-residents they have and
Right.
how big their operation is, and there's a lot of other factors.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what I was getting is, I don't want to spend hours and hours and hours of staff time and it's, $30,000, $35,000 or whatever, because then you have the operational aspect of trying to collect the additional money from the people using the pool. And then at that point, you're probably almost just negative, response. So I'm open to whatever the majority says.
I would just say that if you get $35,000, that should actually just go right back to the pool for cleaning and maintenance. And I think cleaning and maintenance we don't really have to get into the specifics here, is part of the duties of the employees there, is that correct?
Yeah, we just had, less than a month ago, we had a service come in, and they actually cleaned rust off the pool.
Yeah, so I mean,
area. So, no, I mean, no,
$35,000 could
what I'm
afford
saying
a
is we have
weekly-
done it, yeah. We're working with Jefferson as well to do that. I think that's a separate issue.
Yeah, that's why
I don't know
didn't
that
mean
the
to bring
two
it
are
up.
related.
But I just wanted to point out to Mike, if we did make $35,000 a year, it could go back into cleaning, and then the staff wouldn't have to go in and do the toilets and things like that. Thought.
Well,
But you're the boss, so I
I
don't know. if
wasn't
you guys
arguing
want to
either
spend more
yes or
time?
no, I just was, you know.
You guys all say something.
I'd have to see the fee schedules to know whether we should increase the fees or not increase the fees or study the increase of fees. So, and I don't think we're there yet.
Well, didn't you say there were two groups we have that are, there was a swim club or an unidentified group, whatever that means?
Oh, I'm sorry, so we do have a swim team, we have a youth swim team, and there's about, shy of 200 members, and they do not, maybe about 115 families, there is not a non-resident fee for that. They pay a monthly fee, yearly, so we get a very guaranteed, I don't know why they don't get charged. I don't know why we charge non-resident for some things and others, and obviously they've been there for a certain reason. I think for a program like that, maybe it was thought that, well, this is an ongoing program, we're getting the revenue on there, we'd like to get our membership up and we can handle that capacity. The other group about the unidentified are all access members. They're not required to give us all their information, so the ones that we did identify out of the about 417 regular swimmers, there's about 100 that we haven't been able to identify where they live. They could live in town, they could be out of town.
Access members?
All access.
All
It's like almost any time the pool's open, you can come, and there'll be
all
some laps
access.
open
Okay,
for,
okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, it
Yeah.
was too.
So there is a group, there's about 18% for sure that don't live in town, and then there's another 100 that, we're not sure, we're tracking them down.
So I'm going to agree with Sue Vadalos that I would like to see numbers, just so we can understand what that would look like. So I guess that would be my suggestion, if we could see the numbers, and we can go from there.
So I have a question. The fee schedule is located in your packet, and my packet pages have been cut off, so I can't tell you packet page so-and-so, but it is page, let's see, it's toward the back. It's 3 pages from the back of the last page. And it's the fee schedule for the recreational swim, and I think that's what we're talking about here. And I just wanted everybody to...
Packet page 31.
Thank you. So...
On this one.
So I believe it's the recreational swim. Councilmember Martin, correct me if I'm wrong, I just want to know what we're focused on.
Yep, adults 18 to 59. No, that's rec swim. Where's drop-in?
That's,
It should be the next page. I don't know what numbers you're looking at, but
That one's
the
fine.
top thing says recreation swim
yes,
on that page. It might be the next page from where you're looking at.
okay. So the next page starts out with childcare services, and we're out of the aquatics. So,
After swim team, the next fee would be recreation swim.
yes.
Okay.
So you've got youth, 17 and younger, adults, 18 to 59, seniors, all access pass, and so on.
So recreation, that's not drop-in, is it?
Yeah.
It is, okay, so
Yeah,
there it is.
well, it's the same
$6 for
fee,
the-
yeah, it's the same fee for, it is the same fee that they would pay for adult swim or anything like that.
So it's the second line down, under rec swim, adults age 18 to 59, it's $6. And for seniors, it's $5. And I'm just saying, for seniors, keep it the same, youth, keep it the same, adults, go up $2. I don't know, go up whatever you want. No cents, just whole dollars.
No sense.
So in terms of understanding any further analysis, one question maybe directed at Director Perez is, in the information that we collect, do we have any idea as to the numbers of adults 18 to 59 per year that do recreation swim and currently pay $6? Therefore, if we were able to estimate that and we could calculate what an increase would amount to based on that number or estimate.
We can get a number of how many people swam at the pool during drop-in or rec swim or anything like that. What they can also do is buy a discount card and use that. So that could be a little bit trickier. The smart thing, if you're a regular swimmer, is to buy a card because you get a discount on it. But yeah, we can figure out the amount of people that come for the swim.
So is that additional information that the council would be interested to see if that adds up to, $5,000 a year, or we need to
How will you get that
subtract?
information if you're not IDing people now?
Well, if you walk in and if you want to swim and you pay to swim and you go in, you don't have to show your ID to swim at the pool.
Well, that's my point exactly. How are you, maybe I'm just missing something.
So you want to know how many people come in? We know how many people come in.
Like
We count
people,
them.
so it's not giving you the data that you need. It's just people. It's not, it could be adults, seniors, or children.
No, we have that. Yes, we divide adult, senior, yeah. Yeah, we certainly can get
Okay,
that
great.
information.
So
Because they
anybody
pay it,
who's
seniors, and seniors pay a different rate than adults.
So you know the difference between like a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old when you go there? Oh,
Like going to an R movie, maybe there's some that could sneak in, if they really want to, if a 19-year-old is really trying to sneak in.
an estimate.
But I don't, yeah, I mean,
No, I mean, it would be
we
great if
keep
you
those numbers up.
Great,
Yeah, we do
yeah.
keep those numbers, certainly. Because the seniors definitely want to they have a lower rate, so they'll,
Right.
they'll
There's
be
no way
asking for the
you
lower
to-
rate.
But there's no way for you to know unless there's ID, who's a resident and who's not a resident,
Correct.
right? So
Correct.
you might have 100 seniors coming in paying, what is it, $5, but 40 of them are non-residents. So then, we jack it up $1, so it'd be $40 then.
$40.
So, okay,
I don't know.
It's going to be difficult to
right.
come up
Differentiate.
with very accurate estimates about what this might amount to. It's also going to be difficult, but we would take a stab at estimating sort of the impact to staff time in checking IDs, et cetera. The other variable relates to if someone has an annual pass or those. But I guess what I'm seeking is, if the council's interested enough for us to put in the time to bring these numbers together back to the council when we're actually talking about the, budget in the future, the fee schedule in the future, then we'll do that. But if there's not a majority interest of the council, we wouldn't want to spend the time doing it.
Right, I mean, to me, I'm just throwing this out as a proposition, okay? Due to the fact that it would take a lot of staff time to sit there and ask people, where do you live, where do you live, where do you live? Plus the fact that for an uncertain amount, if we wanted to increase the all-access pass and the swim passes by an extra amount for non-residents, I think that would be the most expeditious and the easiest thing to do versus going to the daily $5 pass. Am I incorrect in that assumption?
To get the information about resident versus non-resident, that'd be very easy for us to do, yes.
Right, so then for the way to get to the quickest thing would be to just, and I'm just throwing out a number, is to raise the all-access pass to, let's say, $800 a year, and then for non-residents, and then it's done, right? So we would be achieving Councilmember Martin's goal, but we're also not putting the burden on staff to take and do an interview with everybody coming in,
That's also a good data point, I agree. I mean, don't do this for me. I'm trying to get us more money to do things that we need to do. So whatever you're going to agree to, don't do it because of me.
Yeah. I mean, that was my proposition. I don't,
I agree with that.
you know,
Seems like a small amount of money to do a lot of research on.
I agree, to an uncertain end. So I would just say we raise the passes by whatever percentage we think, and then we call it a day. The youth, adults, and senior citizens one-time swims remain the same.
I can agree with that. I think that's a good idea.
Okay. So we have 2?
Agree?
We have 3?
I'll agree. I agree with that.
Oh, we have 4. You have a
But I did
consensus?
have a question on that for Lorenzo, for Assistant City Manager Hines. Did you say that you thought it would be appropriate for us to be looking at a fees, a survey, or a comparison of our update of all of our fees at some
Yes.
point soon?
And that's correct. I mentioned earlier that these fees were set in place by a fee study that was done in 2013. And so, yeah, we are due for a refresh of that fee study.
And would it get to this level of granularity, this type of, I wasn't aware of the fee study last time.
I would be surprised if it didn't, because, I mean, when we say fees, we mean all fees.
Right.
Yeah, so, you know, I would imagine this entire fee schedule would be part of the scope of work for that particular RFP and subsequent contract, and I would hope to do that in the next couple of years.
Okay, so perhaps we could undertake the other issues, the more detailed issues we were just talking about at that time, and do the all-access pass now? Yes?
I just think it's probably not worth the effort to ask a kid who's in a swimsuit yearning to go into the pool, where do you live, okay?
That's not the question. That's not the question. Number one.
No, that's what she
children.
just asked.
Children, they're not
Yeah.
included.
I didn't say
But,
kids.
yeah, I know, but what she was saying is that we go ahead and raise the all-access pass now, and I mean that, all the passes, and then we have staff come back with a study for more in-depth of the youth, adult, and senior citizens, right? And I still think we're getting to the same minutia of how much staff time is it going to take to get that answer, then, you know, as to how much. I don't know, because, you know, if I was a parent and I have 3 kids, one going to soccer, one going to ballet, and one going swimming, I'd drive to Daly City if I lived in Daly, go to Westmore if I lived in Daly City, you know? So I just don't think it's worth the staff time unless we just arbitrarily decide, okay, we're going to raise youth to 5, adults to 7, and senior citizens to 6. And we do an arbitrary raise everybody up. Because I don't think we can expect staff to spend the time looking at how many residents, non-residents come in, okay? I mean, that's my opinion, right?
So I'm hearing some interest from a majority of the council to look at those recreation swim passes, all access pass, and I'll ask Director Perez if the 20 swim pass and 10 swim pass is also something where the mechanism for which we provide those passes would be really easy for staff to determine whether someone is a resident or non-resident. Our swim programs have some programs that have non-resident currently and some that don't, so we wouldn't be inconsistent in this category where some of them have a non-resident fee and some don't. So I'm hearing interest from the council. If it's an easy thing to do, we could look at that, calculate it, bring it back. Council can make a final decision about that when we review the fee schedule for adoption. And, you know, we'll have more information about maybe estimates of what that would raise.
The only other consideration is the pool, it's probably not the appropriate term, a profit or a nonprofit center. Are we feeding the pool money every year to maintain it, where we need to look at a general rate increase?
It's not 100% cost recovery, if that's what you're asking, but.
That's what I'm asking.
No.
How big is the hole? Because we do have a policy where you're supposed to have,
I'll get back to you on that. To give you the exact percentage, I can tell you what's projected, but not right this minute, I can't tell you.
okay, so when you come back with the past things, can you bring back, because I believe we have a policy of cost recovery for programs. So let's visit the youth and adult at that point and see, do we need to pass a general increase to have zero cost or cost recovery? Am I clear?
Yeah, we can come back on the you know.
And that would be
how
relatively
much cost
easy to see,
recovery
right?
is.
I would find a hard time to find a pool that's 100% cost recovery, so I don't know that we want to, I wouldn't recommend that, but we can certainly look into that. I can get back the number for you, but I don't know that's the way we want to go. Certainly, if you looked at a recreation swim program, you want people to learn to swim, you want them to have access to pool. We live near the ocean and stuff like that. I think that the idea is that typically those kinds of programs are supported by the cities or agencies that run those pools.
No, I can accept that. Let's see how big a hole it is, you know?
Right.
That's it.
And then one final clarification I want to make is, Councilmember O'Neill brought up the question about our neighboring cities that, you know, also are part of the Jefferson Union High School District, but I think for this resident, non-resident, to simplify things, we're talking Pacifica as a resident, and, you know, so Daly City, Colma, Brisbane would be non-resident. That's what I would recommend, at least.
Yeah.
The one thing I just want to say, that the 20 pass things that you see there, they're related to the drop-in swimming. So the all-access is not related to that. So the saying that we don't have resident, non-resident information for the fees for the 5 and 6, it would be the same for the lower part where there's a 20 pass or a 10 pass. Those are just, you walk in, you can buy a pass. We don't ask you for your information.
Okay, so that's not something that we can simply discern residency or not, so I would suggest that we don't include those. So we're looking at just the adult all-access pass.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll,
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you.
thanks, Director
Thanks,
Perez. I would like to note that Parks overall as a department has a return rate of about 82-83%. So I just wanted to make sure you saw that, and you knew that, and you'll be hearing more about that when Director Perez comes back and gives an overview of his budget. So we want to talk a little bit about the master fee schedule, and again, because of my packet pages being cut off, they start at the end of your budget. And if you'd like, I can take you through the document and show you the changes, and then come back and talk about some special topics. Or I can talk about those topics now, and thank you. Or we can talk about those topics now, and then go back to the fee schedule. What's council's pleasure?
Makes no difference to me.
Okay. So let's start with packet page 10. So I thank you. And so I just generally want to take you through what's going on with each department and each area. With the city clerk, we've added, all of the changes are either in yellow or red, and the reds are usually strikeouts or new fees. In some cases, it's yellow and red.
That would be orange.
Because, you know, we're overachievers here. So with the city clerk, we decided to make the photocopy and the photocopy charges consistent with what we've seen in other departments. And so we basically copied over the charges for photocopies into the city clerk's budget, again, for consistency. As we move down to finance, there have been no changes are proposed, other than changing the term marijuana into cannabis there. But Nothing has been proposed. We will talk about the appeals to the city council fee as one of our special topics. As we move on to packet page 11, we've got planning fees. They've gone up by the CPI 3.5%. As you can see down at the third box down, there's been some language change regarding study sessions, and that's mainly for clarification. At the bottom of the schedule, you'll see some more language changes, and that is also there for clarification as well. As we move to packet page 12, no changes in the general planning fees are proposed for the general planning fees, no changes for growth management, no changes for mobile home, and as far as the, no changes for general. As we move to packet page 13, in the building division, there is some language changes at the bottom of the schedule on that page, and again, that's mainly for clarification. No changes on packet page 14, no changes on packet page 15, and no changes on 16 and 17, other than fees moving up by 3.5%. As we move to packet page 18, no changes there. And again, even though I'm saying no changes, those fees that are appropriate to increase by the CPI have been increased. Package page 19, nothing major to report. Packet page 20 and packet page 22 and 23, that yellow section will be another one of our special topics that we'll talk about here in a minute. As we move to packet page 24, we get into the fire fees, and basically all of those fees have gone up by 3.5%. If you move with me over to packet page 26, the public works fee starts at that point. And packet page 27, we have a couple of fees, a couple of new fees that we're proposing. And one of those fees is a heritage tree appeal fee. The department is proposing for $388. And there's also a proposal to driveway curb fee of $216. And $216 is essentially 1 hour of public works' time. And so those fees are proposed. Public Works will be happy to discuss that with you now, or we can talk about it when Public Works comes back. Yes.
When I met with Kevin, I asked him about the tree permit appeal and the California Fair insurance plan. Okay, I don't know if he mentioned this to you. Okay, and I'm trying to, you sent me an email and it was really late, so I'm trying to read it and talk at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to give everybody a brief on this.
I can just explain. Yeah,
Okay.
that was sent just prior to the meeting. North County Fire Authority did reach out to the state insurance group and talked.
We should tell everybody what brought this,
Sure.
what the California Fair plan is.
Yeah, so the California Fair Fire Plan is the backup fire insurance for California residents who can't get it on the private market.
So because we've had 5 insurance companies no longer writing insurance in Pacifica.
Right. And so Councilmember O'Neill brought up a good question, which is probably a new question to most people in the state, that if you are having difficulty getting fire insurance and your potential insurer requires you to have a designated distance of clearance of brush and or trees around your house, and some of those trees or one of those trees is a heritage tree, and you need a permit for that, and that removal of that heritage tree is appealable by someone else, then essentially you would be in the situation of not being able to get fire insurance because someone else appealed your need to cut down a heritage tree in order for you to get fire insurance. What we found out from California Fair Fire is that removal of a tree, and I don't know if this applies to all the insurance companies, is not a part of their plan. What is a part of their plan is different types of brush clearance, tree limb maintenance, but they wouldn't require for the insurance policy that you completely take out a tree. If there was a, and these are case-by-case bases too, so if they came out and examined the tree and said, oh, that's definitely a big fire hazard, maybe it's a dead tree or whatever, needs to be removed, or they said that they would also look at the local policies and fees, and in that case, there would be some sort of exemption made, in terms of the fee charge. I don't think we would be in the situation of charging or having that be appealable in that situation. So it's a new topic, it's a new territory, and it's something that is probably evolving. We'll need to research more, but it's a great question, and that's the information that we have at this point in time.
So basically, my concern until I got the email was the fact that if someone cannot get house insurance, fire insurance for their house, but because they have to trim, because if you look at it, even substantially trim, is it fair for us to charge them $200 an hour to do that? And then plus, if it gets appealed by the neighbor, you know what I mean? This guy doesn't have insurance, and then you get into the lender, their issues and everything else. And I was just concerned about that. Is there an amendment or something we need to do to our heritage tree ordinance to kind of solve this issue? And I know Denise is just caught off guard.
No, and I think again, this is an evolving area that, again, I think what we would look at is we wouldn't want to be in the position of preventing someone from getting fire insurance. And so if there weren't already exemptions in the insurance world related to that, or in the specifics of that case between the city and the insurer, we would look at, do we need to create any amendments to our ordinance?
Yeah, so right now, the Pacifica Municipal Code provides at the front in Title I or Title II that any aggrieved party could appeal the decision. So we would want to look at that provision to make sure that that is appropriate given this issue. And also the heritage trees section of the ordinance. Maybe that would need to be amended as well.
I mean, that was basically my concern, and I don't know if we have, consensus from council, is this valid or not? It's just, I mean, people having fire insurance, I think, is a society good, too, so the whole neighborhood doesn't go up.
I think it's valid. I've been hearing from so many people who have not been able to be insured, so we have to do everything we can to help them.
Yeah, I agree. We just had the wildfire event this past weekend and it came up.
Okay. So
Each appeal is individual anyway, right? If someone makes an appeal, it's an individual appeal. At that point, when the appeal comes forward, we could see whether or not the insurance was an issue. Because how many tree appeals are there? Not that many. Enough to change the whole.
And I would just say that an appeal doesn't necessarily, it may delay the decision, but it may not necessarily impact the decision in and of itself, right?
right, but I would assume, at least from high house insurance, you get the bill and you get like 30 days notice, 30 days you have to pay it or whatever. But if they're canceling, I don't know, do they get 30 days notice? They get 60 or 90 days, that kind of thing?
Well, somebody contacted me recently, it was 30 days.
Yeah, every policy is different, but it would be a reasonable period.
Right, but then if they file it, they'd have to mail to all the neighboring homeowners. The neighboring homeowners have 10 days, blah, 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 but it goes on and on to the point that, all of a sudden the bank is going to buy the insurance for the homeowner, and that will not cover everything a regular homeowner's insurance policy would cover. So that was my concern.
Yeah.
So my suggestion might be that then you may not change the appeal provisions, but maybe write in an exception relating to the heritage tree ordinance that would exempt a need to remove a tree for purposes of insurance or fire concerns, et cetera. Something to that effect, rather than affecting the appeal provisions of the code.
I'm fine with that, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to protect,
That makes sense.
the people, that's all.
I guess what I would recommend, just to be clear on this, is rather than us spend time in city attorney's office money on amending the ordinance at this point, there's more information that we need to learn about, because the information we learned today was these insurance policies are not going to require removal of trees. They will require trimming, and if, in a rare exception, it might require a removal, and that might be able to be handled just on an administrative case-by-case basis. But if after we gather more information, if there seems to be an appropriate simple amendment, we would bring that to the council.
Okay, but I don't know, do you need to get a permit to do a substantially trim? Because it says here, destruction or substantially trim.
Yeah, I think, and then what does substantially trim mean? I don't know. I'd have to turn to Public Works, and I don't think our arborist is available. We can find out more about that and report back to the council on that. But this is an evolving issue, certainly. And I'll just mention that the new fee here, the permit, the heritage tree permit appeal fee, is one that would create, more of a disincentive for someone appealing the removal, that would put a property owner potentially in this situation. Do you know the definition of substantially trim?
It's an arborist standard of trimming the tree. So when you have an arborist out there, they actually look at it and they decide which branches that they need to cut off. And there's a standard to trimming. There's a handbook that they have.
Okay.
And it does say that under section 4-12.04, a permit is required to remove or destroy. It says no person shall cut down, destroy, remove, or move a heritage tree or engage in new construction within the drip line of a heritage tree growing on private property or city-owned property without a permit. As used in this section, destroy shall include substantial trimming, which threatens the healthy growth and development of the tree. But there's no definition for substantial trimming.
That was my concern.
All right, so the next packet page we're on is packet page 28. These are the wastewater treatment fees. And as you recall, a couple of years ago, we embarked on a new rate structure for wastewater. I believe this represents year 3 of the 5-year plan. We will be bringing these rates back to you for review and approval at a later date. Bear in mind, council has already approved the 5-year plan with the proviso that we bring the rates back once a year, so just so council can review and make sure they understand the rates that are going into effect. Yes, ma'am.
Back on prior page,
Yes.
paint, driveway, curb, tips.
I think Public Works Director Bautista will probably be able to address that as well.
Good evening, Mayor Sam Bautista. The red tips are usually for residents who can't get into the driveways, so they want us to paint red tips on their driveways so that they can negotiate in and out of their driveway. So those are special requests.
Thank you. I had no clue. Thanks.
Understood. So we've got the wastewater fees on packet page 28 and 29. And beginning on packet page 30 through the end of the document are the fees for parks, beaches, and recreation. And so they flow all the way from the fees for special classes and the community picnic areas, all the way to a brand-new fee, which is on the very last page of the fee schedule, for philanthropic/city-sponsored activities. And so that's the fee schedule. And while we're not looking for passage tonight, we wanted to make sure that you saw the proposed fees, and that way we've got adequate time to review them and talk about them between now and June 24th, or now and June 10th, which is when we have the public hearing. At this point, I'd like to touch on a couple of special topics. And the first topic is the cannabis fees. And let me take you to...
Lorenzo?
Yes, sir.
I was just curious, could you clarify the last fee here is philanthropic, nonprofit events that financially benefit the city by a minimum of $10,000? Can you give an example of what group? Huh?
Yeah, Director Perez can clarify that, but this has come up in previous years, and so we finally got it into the fee schedule here.
Good evening once again, Council. The last 2 years, Pacificans Care came to Council and were granted a fee waiver for their speakeasy night, which the city is a 50% beneficiary of that, along with the Youth Service Bureau and the Resource Center. And last year, I think after the first year they did it, Council had asked that maybe we could look into a fee. We had talked about that a little bit, and we were not able to get that before you last year. So that's what this is right here.
Okay. I just wasn't quite sure. So like a PTO at a school or Boys and Girls Club or something would still pay the nonprofit rate, but
Unless they donated $10,000 to us during the year, whatever that fee was. We currently, just for reference, Pacificans Care in the last 2 years has given us about $25,000, $26,000 for seniors in childcare.
okay. So
It's come directly from this event.
and that's direct dollars, not in-kind donations, correct? Okay. Thank you for clarifying that for me.
All right. So if you would join me on packet page 23.
Rockaway tree lighting.
And also in your slide deck on page 21. And so we're going to talk about the cannabis fees that are in the fee schedule. We have one change to make and a couple of items to bring to your attention. And so the first thing we want to do is relabel the fees to strike the word marijuana and replace it with the word cannabis. Apparently this phraseology is being used by the state, and we'd like to be consistent with their cannabis efforts. The second issue is regarding the cannabis public safety license fee, and you see that on packet page 23, the very last item under the police fees. And so the ongoing renewal fees per city policy must allow the city to recoup all costs of reviewing, issuing, and administering the program. In addition, when it comes to cannabis, the city has expended significant staff and legal costs in the implementation of this very complex program thus far. The optimal recommendation is to develop a cost recovery fee that allows the city to recoup prior cost and also cover the cost of ongoing activities as well. So what I'm about to show you in the next 2 slides is a summary of all of the prior costs that we've incurred as a city that have not been covered by fees. And then we will show you all of the costs that are necessary to administer the program going forward in the form of a recommended renewal fee. So if you would join me on page 22 of the slide deck. We've laid out all of the costs that the city has incurred from 2017 to 2019 in the implementation of the city's cannabis program. We've broken these costs down by department, and I'm going to just take you through them. With the Pacifica PD, there's been enforcement costs, and so those costs have totaled $6,713. The city attorney cost, and even though you see 4 numbers there, the first 3 numbers add up to the bottom number in that section. So you've got termination of illegal cannabis operations, $51,000. You've got city attorney costs for developing the ordinance of $38,000. You've got city attorney costs for the ongoing advice on cannabis to the city, and that's $47,000. And so those costs total $136,000. Finance, we'll be purchasing a cash machine. We found a machine that allows us to not only count cash, but also detect counterfeit bills and various other security features. That machine will cost us about $2,200. The city clerk, when we last had elections, the cannabis ordinance share of that of the elections cost totaled about $76,000. Planning department for the drafting and passage of the legal framework for the cannabis program totaled $34,900. And so all of those items add up to $256,000 that the city has spent thus far on the implementation of this program. As we move to page 23, we've laid out the ongoing cost to issue the cannabis public safety license fee, the yearly license renewal. And so the review of the renewal application for completeness, our estimate is $1,825. Enhanced police services, we believe that $300 per business is appropriate, and so there's another $1,800. Legal support for cannabis-related issues, $4,000 per business, times 6 businesses is $24,000. Code enforcement, we expect to expend 51 hours times actually the old rate of $209 an hour at $10,659. The finance department, this fee is already in your schedule on the very first page, $500 to issue the renewal. The repayment of the cannabis regulatory startup costs. Now, what I've done in this line item is taken that $256,000 figure that you saw on the prior slide, divide that by 5, and that's that $51,287 that you see there. Because the optimal here is to have an ongoing fee that allows us to not only cover costs prospectively, but also allow us to cover costs that have occurred in the past. The next line item are a third-party contractor, HDL, has services where they can come in and do program compliance inspections on an annual basis, And they can also do fiscal compliance inspections, i.e. audits, as well on a quarterly basis, and for each business, and the cost of that in total will be $22,500 for the program compliance, $30,000 for the fiscal compliance. And so the total amount of cost to be recouped is $142,571. Divide that by 6 locations, and so the recommended fee would be $23,762.
Yearly renewal? The yearly renewal fee is recommended to be 23,000?
These costs that I'm showing you on 23 are necessary every year.
No, I understand that, but is what this saying is that you're recommending that the cannabis safety license fee yearly renewal is 23,000 per business?
That's the recommendation, yes. Can I, allow me to
Just
proceed?
making sure I'm understanding.
Yes. So if you go to page 24, we've taken a look at some of the other cities that have cannabis programs in the state. And just based on my research, St. Louis Obispo's fee is $90,575. Modesto at $21,740. Richmond, $26,448. Cloverdale, $13,392. Redwood City, I believe, is in the process of implementing their fee, but they have a consultant that came in and looked at their fee and their needs. And so I got a copy of that report, which is posted on their website, and the consultant is recommending the renewal fee of roughly $29,530. South San Francisco at $15,274. San Carlos, the actual cost with a $3,000 deposit. So if we were in San Carlos, the charge would be $23,700, and they would have to make a deposit of $3,000 on top of that. So I wanted to give you some context for what is currently a $450 fee on our schedule. And I wanted to also let you know and give you some context for all of the dollars that we have spent in putting this program together. This program is more complex. It has been more litigious than any program I've seen in this city over the past 5 years. So, so we wanted to make sure that you understood that from a past perspective and an ongoing perspective. And then we'll move on to the appeals fees if there's no questions.
Mike,
I just
Mike,
wanted to add real quickly to what Mr. Hines said. As the council knows, recently at the ICMA West Coast Summit or West Coast Conference, I facilitated a roundtable discussion, actually 2 roundtable discussions about cannabis programs in the entire western United States. And a lot of the comparative cities that are here that we looked at were also there talking. And when they heard that Pacifica's renewal fee was $500, I think it's $500 currently. $450. They could not believe that. And so you see around the western United States and definitely in California, fees that these aren't even all of them, I don't think, but the ones we could kind of determine, you see them much more in the 15, 20, 30 and up range because it's an expensive program to administer.
I don't have a problem because it looks like our fee's in line, but like South San Francisco, they don't allow retail, I don't believe, right? They just have testing and then there's delivery. And there's no way for us to charge businesses that, let's say, are in San Francisco that deliver in Pacifica, right?
Well, that's one of the issues we have to explore. We haven't discussed manufacturing. We haven't discussed cultivation. There are still things to be discussed.
we did.
And so, we're just at the sort of the dawn of this program. And I just wanted to give you an idea of, this is part of that ongoing fee, and this is why we need to charge what we need to charge, because these things need to be worked out.
Right, but San Francisco, as of now, my understanding is they only have testing, they don't have any retail operations.
I'm sorry.
I could be wrong, I mean, that's a recollection, that was several months ago.
Yeah.
I was just going to affirm your comment that, yeah, we don't have the ability to sort of monitor and regulate the delivery that are happening in Pacifica from outside of Pacifica, So
South San Francisco has, in their fee schedule, their adopted master fee schedule for 2018-19, they have a cannabis operator fee, and the cannabis operator permit is the $15,000 figure that I stated. So they've got some commercial activities going on there. Now, maybe within the time that you last checked, they may have passed an ordinance and gotten this program into place.
Now, is the $3,000 deposit in San Carlos, is that a credit towards the annual fee, or is that just like a permanent deposit sitting in the city?
No, I mean, I don't know for sure, but I would guess that that's a deposit toward, to get that process started. Whereas we would use city monies to float those expenditures. No, actually, I don't think we would under this process. We would ask for the fee up front. But San Carlos is asking for a $3,000 deposit. They're going to then process the renewal and whatever those costs are, those actual costs. Yeah, I would expect that $3,000 to be deducted from those costs and then the rest charged.
I would probably go, I kind of like the idea of a deposit, to be honest with you. So, that's me.
Well, I understand, but as long as these costs are covered,
Yeah.
and if it's a situation where those costs aren't covered, then it's the other fees that are covering them, or it's the general fund balance that's covering them.
I have a couple questions. Why was it only $450 to start with? Because that's like a surprisingly low amount, but this is like a surprisingly large amount. So if I was a retailer starting my business in Pacifica, trying to make a living and then trying to bring revenue into the city, and then being hit with this giant fee, I wouldn't understand that. So I think we need to be very clear about why it was so low to begin with. And then, are they going to be able to handle that? Like, will our retailers be able to make money and bring revenue into our city when we don't even know how much revenue they're bringing in yet? They're just starting. Some haven't even started yet.
So those are good questions, Councilmember Beer, and for just to point out that this is a renewal fee, so this is not from the beginning of the businesses, and as you noted, some of them have just started. So this is the renewal fee. We don't have the data yet on the amount of sales and the tax revenue from these businesses, but I can say anecdotally from talking to my colleagues from around the state that typically these businesses are bringing in amounts of revenue from their sales that dwarf this immensely. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month these businesses are selling. And so an annual fee that's being recommended here is potentially less than a day's sale. That's information from other cities. We don't have that data yet specific to Pacifica, so in future months, as the businesses pick up, we'll know that information. But if we had that to compare here, it would help the decision. And then I'll defer to others, because I wasn't here when this program was kicked off, about the current $450 fee.
Well, and then what if they don't make a lot of money? I mean, I think I'm just very concerned about the people that are coming into our city trying to...
Well, even if they don't make that money, we still have these same costs that the city is incurring
Right.
for that business, and we're trying to be cost recovery here.
Right, and if they don't make that much money, could it be like spread out, or I don't know how it works.
Yeah, the other thing to think about, from a business perspective, you're in a market where the commodity is pretty much in demand. And for you not to be able to make that work, the concern is not so much whether or not you can make the money. The question is, why aren't you making the money? What's going on with the business? Is there something with the competency of the leadership? Why is it everyone else can make money in this industry and we're struggling? So that leads to other questions.
Okay.
Deirdre?
So I had the same concern as Mary, but I agree with you that there's a big demand for it right now, and if they're not making money, then there is a problem. So my question is, when does the year start? I'm unfamiliar with how business licenses work. Does it start from the day they open their door and start making money?
It would technically start a year after they've gotten their permit from the city and then subsequently from the state.
So in other words, there's a place on Palmetto right now that's doing all this construction. Could they already have their business license hanging on the wall in there but not be operating?
I don't know. I don't know where they are.
So Chief Steidel is here, and I'm sure he can speak to this, but my understanding is the public safety license is issued before the state issues its permit, because the state needs the public safety, it needs the local regulatory agency to grant its permits before the state will issue its license to the business. So there could be a period of time after which the city has permitted the business, but before the business can begin legally operating.
Okay. So it sort of answers my question. So there may be a time where, like, this place over here could have a business license because they could already have their safety license, and they're just not making money because they don't have the doors open, right?
Yes, Dan Stadler, your chief of police. Yes, that's true. If you're talking about lit, they do have their public safety license, and I know they have applied for their state license, and the state is already contacting me to confirm that they are authorized to operate in the city, and as far as the city is concerned, they are authorized to operate.
Okay, because they're not near opening.
And that could be a significant gap in time. We've heard that the Bureau is taking some time to issue its state licenses, so it's unclear how long that gap would be.
Yeah, and then even so, aside from that, there's the whole permitting with the actual space that they're in, because they still have construction and ADA stuff to do, so they're not, just a point in case it comes back for discussion by owners. And then my other question is, I'm an owner, right, in theory, in this example, what happens after 5 years and we pay off that original 5-year recovery cost? Does it go down by that?
One would expect it to go down. There may be intervening increases in staff costs in that 5 years, but it should more than offset that.
So we'll go down by
I can't say it'll go down by the 51,000.
1,000.
That's total.
Right, that's what I'm
That's- yeah.
saying, so divided by 6, right? And if one of these places closes and a new place opens up in their stead, that fee still applies no matter what. They can't argue with us on that regarding, hey, I wasn't one of those original 6.
Right, and the way these fees are set up is this: we're giving you a proposal on the renewal fee right now. We still have to look at the public safety license Phase 1 and Phase 2, which that new business would be subject to. It looks like they're appropriate right now, but we're still looking at those. Our focus right now is on the renewal because we have 6. But
Okay,
Yeah.
that's,
What if we change it so that the first year renewal is 15,000?
Right.
The second year renewal is 30,000? so that we can then make it up in the following years.
Yeah.
But give them a small break in the first year
Have it
because
step
they're a new business, and that time gap between the licenses may affect their incomes during the first year.
I think it's a good idea.
Curious in terms of, our other business licenses, are they based on amount of sales?
The business license itself is based on gross sales.
Okay, what about our annual fee being a percentage of sales? If they are bringing in the amounts you're saying every month, could we do a percentage of sales not to be less than these costs? Go ahead.
So typically, a fee is to recover the reasonable costs of the program or the regulatory process that's been developed to cover the cost of the fee. So I think if you did it that way, you would probably want to structure it so that there is a way to limit it so that it doesn't exceed the cost of the service, but then it would be difficult to track, because how do you know that their gross sales haven't exceeded the cost of the service that you're providing?
Because they're providing, what is it, 6% excise tax to us and a certain excise tax to the state, which I'm assuming we're paying HDL a certain amount every year for financial impropriety or something, right? Yeah.
Compliance.
Fiscal compliance, yeah, program compliance, fiscal compliance. So then if we, okay, but getting back to the thing, the business license is a percentage of sales. Now you're talking about a master fee schedule for an annual, is this the annual business license, or is this a fee? And what is the difference between a license and a fee?
I think the business license is a tax.
Business license is a tax?
Right. And there is a distinction that needs to be made between a business license fee and this renewal fee. The business license fee does not drive the sheer number of resources in order to reissue a business license fee.
Okay. Yeah.
It's an application. It's my staff taking in the application, processing the application, and we don't have to have legal involved. We have minimal police involvement. I don't need HDL to come in and verify anything with these vendors. I don't have to anticipate any litigation over this process. But whereas with this industry, all of those things play a role. And this is a lot more complex and, like I said, a lot more litigious than any of the industries we have in town.
Okay, then to allay the concerns of the council members that because it's a new business, could we do something of percentage of revenue or these fees? Is that?
I actually think that the businesses themselves would just prefer to pay the fee.
Just the flat, know ahead of time?
Yeah. That
Okay.
way they can plan for it. Because when you're starting to now ask for a percent of sales.
Oh, I understand.
My concern would be that you'd be essentially double taxing them, because you already have an excise tax, which is tied to gross receipts. And then you would be saying, oh, on top of that, we're going to be charging our regulatory fees in the form of a percentage of your gross receipts, which to me would be another tax.
Okay, all right. So this is the annual business fee, basically.
Right, right. And so the way we would structure this program is basically for those entities that have already paid all of the fees for the Phase 1 and Phase 2 and have gone through the process, they've already paid under the old fee structure. For those, the remaining 2 that haven't paid, they're still going to be subject to the old fee structure as far as the fees. Now, when everyone comes back for that 1-year renewal, that's when this fee kicks in. Okay? So I wanted to make sure I gave you that clarification. That way, we don't want to have any inequity with 4 paying 1 fee and 2 paying another. That's just not, it's not equitable.
With regard to the repayment of cannabis regulatory startup costs, which is costed out over a 5-year period at $51,287 a year,
Yes.
is that a generally accepted accounting principle, 5-year payback? Is it a judgment call? Could it have been spanned over 10 years? Like, what is the, I mean, I'm presuming if this industry takes hold and is solid in Pacifica, it's going to go on indefinitely.
Right. And I think the thinking is that if that, and we expect that to occur, and that the city would like to be made whole as quickly as possible. And that's why the 5-year plan, and as opposed to 10 or 15.
I have another question with regard to the litigation costs. Are we referring to things like when appeals have been filed and the city's legal counsel has to review and prepare responses to those appeals?
That would be one example, yes.
So the cost in your PowerPoint presentation don't include specific costs relating to litigation per se. This would be the general costs relating to enforcement of or development of the regulations and appeals to council relating to the regulations and payments.
Director Waremeister.
If I could just clarify, any appeal associated with what we were calling the MUP applications, those are covered under our regular time and material costs that we charge the applicants, so they are not in this fee. Those specific appeals are not in this fee because the applicants, the use permit applicants, they have already paid for them. We charge time and materials for all of our planning applications, so basically for phase 3, those costs have been completely cost recovered and are kind of in our regular use permit process.
All right, I stand corrected.
Thank you.
So are you looking for us to all shake our heads one way or the other then? And get a consensus?
I'm sorry, sir.
Are you all looking for us to shake our heads and give you a consensus or comments?
Yeah, I mean, the direction we want is, the goal here is to head towards cost recovery and the annual renewal fee. And so that's, I'm kind of looking for the head shake regarding that. So we proceed when the fee schedule comes back to you. That'll be built in. If there's specific alternatives that we want to build in, then we would need to develop those alternatives, and when we bring the fee schedule back, the council can decide on one, and so then we ascertain the fee and it's in place.
Yeah.
And you've actually brought up some interesting alternatives from the dais here tonight.
Could you reiterate them? Because we're, I mean, I just want to be clear because, are we looking at like maybe incremental adjustments so that our new businesses can start out with something a little smaller than that?
There was a proposal to do 15 one year and 30 the next.
Okay.
There was, I'm sorry, go ahead. There was, even though there wasn't a proposal, there was the question about the recoupment fee is, why 5 years? Can that be stretched out? And so that's something that we'd look at. Those are the two.
That clarified it for me.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I just want to point out, because it's an important point here, and actually Councilmember Martin had raised it, is that the first year of operation is free from this renewal fee. So in terms of a gap of time between city permit and state permit or tenant improvements and opening up, we hope that they're motivated to do all of that within a year, but the renewal fee doesn't kick in until year 2. So it's essentially already phased in, where very low, and then you have a renewal fee that is intended to recoup our costs that we experienced before that, as well as ongoing.
Except as was suggested that sometimes there could be a 6-month gap between when you get your initial permit and then when you renew. So your whole year of exemption is not really there. It might only be 6 months until you have to pay the fee.
That's right, from when you open, but yet, and again, we don't have this data point, but other cities do, the amount of sales revenue that they're bringing in makes that kind of a moot point.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we can only hope that they bring in a ton of money, right? That's what we want.
Right.
But until then, I would really like to see the 15, 30 increment, what that could look like for the city for cost recovery.
All right. So if there are no more questions on that particular topic?
Not that topic. I did have one other fee-related question, but I think you're going through your,
Yeah.
so I'll hold my question.
Okay. All right. We have one more sort of special topic to discuss, and that's the appeal fee. And that's the appeal fee. And our proposal is to increase the appeal fee to $500. The appeal fee currently does not cover the cost of addressing the requirements of our appeals. And our appeals require processing, scheduling, and noticing by the clerk's office, review by the city manager and city attorney, and departmental review, research, and staff report preparation. Our current appeals fee is $362. And I would, as you've seen, the hourly cost for planning, just 1 hour for planning, is $216. And and I use planning because we have a lot of our appeals that flow through, if not just about all of our appeals, flow through the planning department. And so again, I misspoke earlier. Our current fee is $375. It's back on packet page 10. And so we're proposing to increase that to $500. And we would hope that that $500 gets us closer to having this appeal fee cover the cost associated with appeals. If you would join me on packet page 26, we did a survey of some of our surrounding cities, and there are some interesting sort of configurations that other cities are using for the recovery of appeals fee. But the first city that we wanted to show you was Woodside. Their appeals fee is $400. Belmont, their appeals fee is $1,012. Millbrae, $523. Now, Redwood City has an interesting process here. So for the permit fee or deposit of less than $4,500, the appeal fee is $640. If it is greater than $4,500, then the permit fee is $2,668. Then, I'm sorry, the appeal fee is $2,668. So that's an interesting way to stratify the different levels of appeal fee. Foster City also has another way of looking at their appeals fee, and so they've broken the appeals down by appeal by resident, applicant or appeal by non-resident, a non-applicant. And so over here on the right, the actual costs subjected to a minimum deposit, that $500 is associated with the appeal for residents. The $1,000 is the appeal for non-residents. And I've included their sort of footnote disclosure under the Foster City entry here, in that the actual cost is the time and materials, including all direct and indirect overhead cost. So if we were in Foster City, we'd be charging a lot more than $500 for these appeals. And then the city of San Mateo, their fee is $500. So given that we know we're not recovering the full cost of that we're not recovering the full cost of the fees, we thought a movement to 500 would be appropriate. And again, given our cost configuration and given that our surrounding communities are in the general ballpark of the 500. We're just sort of in the median here. And so that's why we are proposing to move the appeals fee up to 500.
Question is, this, let's say an applicant is turned down by the Planning Commission. If they want to appeal it, the applicant would pay us $500 also, correct?
Yeah, Director Warmeister, as I mentioned, a lot of the appeals flow through planning.
Right, so I'm only speaking to appeals of planning items, entitlements. So once again, we're 100% cost recovery. So the $500 would cover Sarah's time, like city clerk's time, city manager's time, to bring the appeal, the administrative work that needs to be done to bring the appeal to council. The actual planning staff time, city attorney time is going to continue to be charged to the applicant, even if the applicant is not the appellant. So if the applicant does happen to be appellant, let's say they're not happy with a condition or they get denied, then yes, they still have to pay the $500 and they're paying for time and materials.
Okay.
Some may say this is unfair, but even if somebody else appeals somebody's project to the city council, they only pay $500 and the applicant is still paying for all of the time and materials.
Okay.
So there's a lot of other types of applications that get appealed that may not be fully covered in the $500.
Okay. Thank you, Jean.
And I would just add that some, like zoning code amendments, are not applicant-driven. They're initiated by the city, and so there would not be an applicant deposit where the costs are being recovered from.
Okay with this?
All right, and that concludes our presentation of the 2019-2020 budget. And I am open for any and all questions on issues that I haven't covered or issues that I have covered.
I had a question on an issue you didn't cover, and I actually can't find it in the fee schedule, and perhaps it's not here because it's not one of the ones that you were bringing to our attention tonight. But I've heard from a couple of residents, and literally, I mean two.
Right.
But I have no way of judging how widespread this issue is, and it's with regard to having an alarm system at your home. And I think that would fit under,
Oh, that would be under the police.
which I believe is starting on
I'm trying to get there too.
the other packet page. Oh, but you don't have the numbers, right? It's 19.
Which one?
I have packet page 19. I think it starts there. I'm not sure.
Is that the false alarm?
False alarm, first
Yes.
response, second through fifth response, 6 or more responses.
Right.
False alarms without permit. So this is is there a fee for getting an alarm installed?
Yeah, there's a first initial fee, $75.
Oh, wait, where's that?
I just remember that from last year.
Oh,
I
okay.
think,
And the issue that was brought to my attention was that this was to be a one-time fee. When you get your alarm system installed, you pay a one-time fee. And that was their understanding, and then they got a bill for a renewal. And were surprised, but I thought, well, maybe the renewal fee was approved by council subsequent to them getting their alarm system. And so I wanted to explore this a little more just because I got the question.
Certainly, Dan Stadio, Chief of Police, again, I believe it was 2 or maybe 3 years ago, we changed that process. I don't remember the exact year. It used to be a one-time fee, and then we changed this in the code or on the fee schedule. The reason we changed that was to recover our costs, because in terms of the alarm permit, it's not just simply issuing a piece of paper. There's data that we capture from the people regarding, you know, who do we contact in the event that we respond out there, we find an open door, you know, whatever the case may be. That information needs to be continually updated in the system. So there are yearly, when these permits are renewed, when we need to do this information, the front office has a stack of envelopes more than this high, trying just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these things that they have to go through. They have to enter the data to keep the data up to date. What we were finding without a yearly renewal process was that we were people that had alarms, didn't live there anymore, the alarm system was no longer functional, or even worse for the police department, the contact information was no longer good. People had changed their phone numbers, so we were stuck in a situation with at their residence responding to their alarms and not being able to reach the people and get the information that we needed at the call.
And that fee that Councilmember Beckmeyer is referring to is on packet page 20. It's the under general alarm permit and alarm permit renewal.
Oh, thank you. So, I don't see it, but,
It's $91 proposed this coming fiscal year.
there.
it's on packet
I
page
see.
20.
okay, alarm permit.
91 for the initial fee,
Renewal is
48
48, okay.
for the renewal.
And then what I'm looking at on packet page 19 then is the cost of actually responding to a false alarm?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Chief, how many arcade permits do we have? I don't know of a
I
single.
believe that would be 0.
Oh, okay, because I couldn't recall an arcade in
It's
town.
funny that you mentioned that, because today I was going through the files asking my admin assistant, come on, you got to find an arcade permit because somebody's going to ask. I
And
don't
it would
think we
be
have any
Mike.
currently.
Thank you, because I couldn't recall an arcade in town.
And so, council, we will be back with the individual department briefings on the 13th and the 28th. If you have any questions regarding anything that you've heard tonight, feel free to reach out through City Manager Woodhouse, and we'll be happy to respond to any issues that you may have or questions that you may have.
Mary?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for all of your hard work and your transparency. It's really important for our community.
And we do have one more item. We have 2 members of the public. Would either of you like to speak on anything that we discussed tonight? And if you would, you can come forward, but you need to fill out a yellow card. Seeing no one stepping forward, we shall bring it back to council. And if council has nothing else to say, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.
Lorenzo, thanks for fixing this.
Thank you. Nice work.
Yes.
Did you ever call Julie back?
Twice, 3 times total, but she didn't call me back from me calling her back.